Joining me now is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor of Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, great to have you here, but what about this unbelievable betrayal, and I don't think there's any other word for it, of Israel, with Joe Biden saying it will stop supplying Israel weapons if they push ahead with their offensive on Rafah? I mean, this from the same guy who said once upon a time said cutting off aid to Israel would be preposterous, and it looks like a political quid pro quo. How transactional and boneheaded is this?
It's political, James. And keep in mind, Donald Trump was impeached for much less than this when he temporarily froze aid to Ukraine because of corruption. This is bizarre, but this is political. And here's what Joe Biden's trying to do. He's trying to have it both ways. There are elements of the Democrat Party that want to support Israel, and there are elements of the Democrat Party that do not want to support Israel. And he's trying to do both. Keep in mind, the Democrat support for the aid package that Biden is now withholding was tremendous in the United States House of Representatives and the Senate. But on the other side of the equation, he does have these protesters and college campuses, young voters threatening not to vote for him. And let's not forget, we've talked about it in this program before, the block of Palestinian American voters in some swing states, including Michigan. So, as is so often the case, he's trying to have it both ways, and he's getting killed on both sides for it.
Yeah, but that's the whole nature of this foreign policy. It dates back to the Obama days, this idea that we're going to try and make Iran legitimate and give them kind of a sphere of influence in the Middle East, which, of course, was totally insane to anybody who'd ever read a book about the subject. But just on the question of these protests, how much are they actually now playing into the hands of Donald Trump? I know that in 2020, when we had the Black Lives Matter protests, those really played into the hands of the Democrats. But this now round of protests, it seems like every election year we get them, this seems to be something that's going to turn off the mainstream.
Yeah, I had a fascinating conversation with a group of my Democrat and Republican friends in Washington just this week. And what it seems to remind everybody, of course, nobody remembers it anymore because of how long ago it is, but in terms of an academic sort of perspective, reminds everybody a lot of 1968 and the Vietnam War protests and how that disrupted the Democrat Party at that time and gave us 2 elections for Richard Nixon. When law and order became an issue, the Republicans did very, very well. That's sort of the way it feels here today, that even swing voters are looking at these protests going, you know what, I'm all for free speech, but anti-Semitism is a bridge too far. And if Biden's not going to do anything about it, and he's not, I'll consider voting for Donald Trump. So you're already starting to see that filter through. The better comparison is not 2020, it's 1968.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And also, there's also this other issue of turnout, too, because, of course, the Democrats have always relied so much on those young voters coming out. But, I mean, if a large block of young people are now calling him Genocide Joe, well, that's a problem for the Democrats, isn't it?
It is. Keep in mind, I taught a class this past semester at the University of Chicago, and the Democrat Party was handing out flyers calling him Genocide Joe and calling on the Democrats to not have their convention in Chicago. Keep in mind, where was the Democrat convention in 1968? Chicago. So if history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it does rhyme. This is a major, major problem for the Democrats, and it is hurting Joe Biden politically without question.
Yeah, no, it is wild. And just back to the foreign policy side of it, too, and this great theme of betrayal of a U.S. ally. And let's remember, Trump was always accused of selling out U.S. allies to cozy up to dictators. Well, less than a day before the Biden administration announced its intent to cut off the arms sales to Israel, check this out. They also issued a sanctions waiver to bypass congressional prohibitions on arms sales to Arab nations that boycott the Jewish state, including Hamas ally Qatar, where a whole bunch of Hamas bigwigs are living in hotel suites, as well as Iran-controlled Lebanon. I mean, at some point, this kind of both sidesism really does feel like they're actually taking the other side.
It is. They can't do it as aggressively. Keep in mind, I think left to his own devices, Joe Biden is pro-Israel. He has been for a long time. So what you're seeing him do now is sort of react politically, and that's always going to lead. You have to be yourself if you're going to be the president of the United States. And he's, again, trying to be himself and be something else at the same time. The deal, that news broke here in the last 24 hours, and it's absolutely all over the news here about how people were upset enough about not funding Israel, not giving them bombs. It was the lead editorial in many of the newspapers here today. But then to find out in the next breath that he was going ahead and allowing sales to Qatar and to Lebanon is really got him in hot water. And you're right. It sort of looks like, he says to himself, well, I was pro-Israel for a while. Now I'm going to be anti-Israel and see if I can get away with it. Tough sell for the American voters.
Look, let's move on, though, because there is this Stormy Daniels thing still kicking around here. And Judge Merchan, the judge in the case, has denied Trump's call for a mistrial or a modification of the gag order, saying that he should be able to shield himself against Stormy Daniels' salacious and prejudicial testimony. Have a look at what Donald Trump had to say outside court just yesterday.
He's a corrupt judge, and he's totally conflicted. And I got to get back on the campaign trail. I'm not supposed to be here. We are so innocent. There's never been anything like it. It's a disgrace to the city of New York, to the state of New York, and to the country.
Punchy words there from Donald Trump. How is this all, though, playing out? I mean, are Americans even tuned into this, or is this just something that people on CNN like to talk about? Ooh, look what Stormy Daniels said Trump did, blah, blah, blah.
Well, they've tuned in for the last couple of days because of the salaciousness of the testimony, which of course is what the Democrat Attorney General wanted in the first place. This case is not really about business records. That's really boring. It makes for bad television. No one wants to watch it. But the democratically elected Attorney General in New York wanted this testimony because he thinks it'll make Donald Trump look bad. All the stories about infidelity, the stories about sex with alleged sex with an adult film star, an adult dancer. This is what this case is about, not about the records. I don't think it's moved the needle, James. Keep in mind, show me the person in America who hasn't made up their mind about whether or not Donald Trump, is the type of person that they like or they don't like. I don't really think this is going to change. It makes the DA and the judge very popular at cocktail parties here on the island of Manhattan, where I'm sitting. But I don't think it moves any voters. Are they watching? Yes, because it's must-see TV and will be for the next couple of days. But this is not what the case is about. The case is about records, and that tends to bore people tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, very, very quickly, is this a bit of a flashback to Ken Starr going after Bill Clinton for lying about an affair? And everybody said, Bill Clinton, come on, let's go on and talk about more important things.
Yeah, keep in mind the Bill Clinton impeachment case was about lying and perjury, not about sex with Monica Lewinsky. And look what happened at the end of that process. Bill Clinton was more popular after that proceeding than he was before. There's a really good chance Donald Trump falls into that same category.
I think you're absolutely right. Mick Mulvaney, thanks so much for your time here on the U.S. Report.